So we just got to our next call, and it's another no cool call. So we're just gonna go in there and we're gonna do the same order, kind of follow that same process and figure out what's going on with it and go from there. So we just got in here and we're just taking a look at the furnace right now. First thing that I'm noticing is I can just tell that the outdoor unit is not kicking on. Typically we can actually hear that compressor running from inside, and if you feel these lines, you'll kind of feel the vibrations from that compressor. So the fact that we don't have anything running outside, we already know that it's not going to be doing much cooling. So same thing, we'll just kind of go through the whole furnace, we'll check everything in here, and then we'll work our way outside and figure out why that compressor's not running. So right now what we're doing is we're just going through the furnace and checking all the wear items in there. So one thing we'll check on all furnaces every call is this guy right here. It's called a blower capacitor, and you'll see here it's rated for 5 UF. So a UF is essentially a microfarad is what it's called. And it's just a measurement to read these capacitors. So really we're just trying to make sure it's within the range. If it isn't, then we'll recommend replacing it. So you'll see it's reading 3.34 out of 5 microfarads. So for this specific capacitor, I would say it is out of range, and we would recommend replacing it to keep the unit running operational, keeping it running efficiently. Kind of look at all these rust marks here. So essentially this is the exhaust pipe for the furnace. Now if you look closely, you can see where this metal is starting to rust, and if you actually push on it, you can see that that metal is cracking super easily. So what's going on here is essentially when this furnace is running, this pipe's gonna be running at about 400 degrees. For air around it's usually gonna be around 70 degrees. So what happens is it's gonna condensate from the inside of this pipe outward. And anytime we see these rust marks on the outside, basically I can tell that this pipe is failing from the inside outward. And really anytime I can push through that metal, I'm gonna tell you that this pipe is now compromised and it will need to be replaced. And since this is carrying carbon monoxide out of the house, it is a very serious safety concern. Carbon monoxide, it is odorless, it's tasteless, and it'll stay in your body for 7 years, and it is poisonous. So really we have to make sure we're doing our due diligence to make sure that these customers are going to be safe all winter time. And like I said earlier, even though we're looking at the AC today, the furnace, the safety, all of it is still our priority. Right now what we're doing, we came out here and the outdoor unit was not turning on. We could tell it wasn't turning on, and it wasn't even trying to turn on. So really the first thing that we got to check is that capacitor always. Like I said earlier, the capacitor just helps start those motors. So really if that capacitor has failed, we're not going to get anything to turn on. It's not going to be doing any cooling. So I always say the capacitor is your first step. You know, if that capacitor is bad, then we know, okay, we got to replace that capacitor and then go from there. Reading this one, so we got our leads on the capacitor on the inside of the unit, and we can see here it's reading 0 nanofarads. So a nanofarad is essentially 1/1000th of a microfarad. Really any nanofarad reading, whether it's 1000 or 1, I'm going to say is bad because it's already 1/1000th of 1 microfarad. For this specific capacitor, we're looking for a reading of 40 right here. And if you actually look at the capacitor in here, you can see where it has actually popped the top of it up. Typically this should be nice and flat right here, but you can see that this capacitor has been basically popped itself, and that is why it is raised up like that. So that's something that people can check, and you can kind of see if your capacitor's failed if it does pop like that. Now not all capacitors are going to fail like that. Some of them will look totally normal whenever they do fail, but typically when the units get very dirty like this and they haven't been maintained in a while, that is usually when you're going to see those start to basically pop those capacitors. And that's just because it's working that hard. It just is struggling for air. Think of it like if you're going on a jog on a hot summer day and then you put your winter coat on for your jog, it's going to make your body struggle. You're going to start to notice a difference. Today we'll be getting them a price to replace that capacitor. Hopefully we'll get this unit up and running in no time. So now we figured out what is going on with the air conditioner. There is a couple different things in the outdoor unit that will need to be replaced. One of which is a regular capacitor, dual start capacitor, and then one of which is a hard start capacitor. So before we go ahead and replace those, we're just going to do an overall inspection on the inside of the furnace. We'll check the heat exchanger on it since it is 17 years old. Like I said, really we just want to give the customer as much knowledge about the furnace, about the air conditioner as possible. That way they're not spending a lot of money on a pricey repair today and then needing additional repairs in the wintertime when it comes time to run this furnace. Alrighty, we just got the system up and running. Basically what we did is we went ahead and replaced the capacitor, and then we also added the hard start capacitor to the system. So basically with the amount of repairs that were needed and the age of the system, the customer had decided that looking into replacements probably going to be their best option. So basically what we did at that point is we're planning to replace this system next week, but since they're left with no cooling right now, essentially what we're doing is just getting the system temporary cooling. That way they're not going to be hot until we can get the system replaced next week. So right now what we're doing is we're just going to hook up our gauges. Since we got it running, we're going to hook up these gauges here. We're going to start checking the refrigerant charge on the system and just make sure it's going to be good to go for the next week. Last thing we want to do is have them call us again in 3 days and saying, hey man, it's not working again, whenever we just told them, yeah, we'll be back out next week to replace it and you're good to go. So this is just another step of doing your due diligence, checking really everything you can, and that'll usually just get us further than if we just replace the part that failed and then head out, because at that point we didn't check everything, we didn't tell them everything that they needed to know, and we could have missed something simple. So we'll check it all, and as long as they'll be good to go for the next week, we should be all good.